Hi. Thanks for attending and hope you find this talk useful. My name is Marcus Thompson. I'm a specialist in the design process and the application, education and integration of seated, balance-based movement technology. And it's been a journey getting here. I've had 21 years teaching in art, engineering, outdoor education. I'm an athlete and an artist and an adventurer. Before and after breaking my back, T12, 18 years ago, getting ready for a ski race. And since then, I've had the privilege to have worn the silver fern in 3 codes representing New Zealand: wheelchair, basketball, adaptive surfing and Parava'a outrigger canoe racing. And I coach in sports and create seating to position people with determination to find their strength, to find sustainable performance at the best their body can be. And I've had a 10-year journey also to date with my great friend, Kevin Housel, as he's invented the systems of the Omeo, and as a team piecing together and articulating the what, the why, the how, this self-balancing tech works and how it should work and how it could work with a rider. And in that process of invention and many tests and many crashes, we've sort of defined the parameters of what can actually be achieved in this format and how it works and what's happening in the body. And alongside Kevin and Kay have been putting their all into the business of the Omeo. And we've now many riders of all shapes and sizes across 7 core countries on their journey with this technology. And I'm proud of the trial and the assessment and the training system that we run at Omeo, which makes for happy, productive, safe and sustainable riders. And this is based on the teaching experience and philosophy that I bring and the work ongoing in this sector. And with that, the wonderful team of people that wrap around this product to make it live, from the people doing the assessments and guiding people, aligning expectations, opening pathways and making the possibilities happen. Because it's a live platform and it requires learning, it requires the use of balance, it requires a shift in the functioning of brain back into what's akin to learning to walk. We have this network of agents and trainers who are able to hold people's hand and walk them through that journey, to help nurture them on this journey of learning to make for strong and productive users of this technology. And it's in that sort of global sphere of team, of family, that really makes this work. So let's grab a seat and have a chat. And let there be a desk. Seated balance-based movement technology. How does it work? Let's have a quick look at our models here. And there's 3 different types. We've got 2 in 1 and then the star of the show here. They're a seated platform with electric control powered base unit. They're working off a central pivot point which is in through the axle of the wheel. Now the central point gives a point of balance, point of movement and a point of weight shift. So when we've got weight shift going forward and back, movement of a body creating weight shift over a central balance point. And these machines can register which way is up, so they register gravity, they register where you are on the earth. So as you lean forward over the central point, you've got go, and as you lean back, you've got braking. Now the first setup is a rigid seat that you're sitting on. One of the issues with this format is the weight transfer, so we can try and get as much weight back over that central point as possible, but you can see that's pretty uncomfortable, and also it doesn't have a great coefficient to the amount of braking, to the amount of speed that these machines in a Segway-esque based format can achieve, which is up around 20 kilometers an hour. So to get around that, the likes of the Genie and the Free have made a seat back that can move, so as you lean back, you get a lot more weight shift happening back past that central balance point, and so you've got a reasonable amount of braking, but it's still not as good as it can be. So that brings us to the Omeo. So the third system which is found in the Omeo is the patented double pivot system. So you've got the pivot point in the wheels with the electronic control and the motor drive, and then you've got a mechanical pivot in between the base unit and the rider themselves, and this allows for a forward and back movement over a central balance point, as well as when steering's involved, a side-to-side movement. So you've got double axis balance demands in this format, whereas this format here only has forward and back, and it's all through the base unit. So what this allows for is a much bigger weight shift over the central balance point. So as we're leaning back for a braking action, say, we've actually got a whole swing of the body going backwards. And the other really neat thing you see is that the seat itself, it moves with the body. So the seat acts like a brace. It's holding and it's supporting the rider. And when you're going forward in a braking motion, you get a nice downward push of the body into the seat base, and you're not being tipped out the front. So it's incredibly supportive. Interestingly, in this brace-like action, you're not locking out muscle. So whatever muscle group somebody has, they're being activated and they're being used. And then to get weight shift from these extremes, we can also pivot and move through the hinge points in the body to start influencing and changing the seating attitude, and then back to our point of center, which in our point of center with these machines, of course, is our neutral, is our stop, is our pause. So you're always on a live platform, and whichever way you lean, you go. So for the rest of the discussion, we will focus on the Omeo. So how does this sort of tool work in partnership with the rider? Well, it's highly adaptable to whoever you sit in here. So we've got C5, C6, tetraplegics through to amputees, paraplegics, people with chronic fatigue, MS, traumatic brain injuries, all sitting and using these machines in a very similar manner. The activation of balance and balance control. So because we're sitting on a dynamic balance point, a person is able to mobilize the body and create movement. And in that process, the movement becomes somewhat subconscious in terms of control. And the ability to move throughout the world in a subconscious manner, you start to engage and the tool picks up where the body leaves off. And so when we've got a mobility issue where some functionality we're not able to move and engage and steer our body appropriately or get a healthy cyclic rhythm in our movement, this machine, from the point of drive, from the point of balance, and from the point of registration of where we are in the world, are we on an angle, are we going down a slope, are we going up a slope, what our spatial demands or needs are around the environment, we're in an enclosed environment or we've got big wide open spaces, whether we're going fast, whether we're going slow, all that becomes a sort of a seamless partnership between what the machine is doing and what the rider is doing. And when a rider builds their skill set on a platform like this, because it is a learning progression and it's a skill development progression to really get in tune with this, a little bit like learning to walk again. When a rider gets into that space, we see people really engaging in life in a different way because there's a different bandwidth in the mind available to make connections to the world around us. We're not solely focused on the act of navigating around life. We're doing that in partnership, and we're doing that with power control and safety and a rhythm, and therefore we can start reaching out with our mind and our body to engage in other things in life. These machines are very compact, taking up the same sort of space as a standard wheelchair, about 600 millimeters wide. The ability to move forward and back with weight shift of the body over a central balance point and to steer at the same time gives us such an agility. So we've got zero turn, but we've got the ability to do a multi-point turn, so we can fit in very tight spaces in these machines and be productive. Whether it's from cooking in a kitchen, working through the house in a bathroom, or to being out on the beach and ranging out over the sand, or down the street in a crowded sidewalk, and we get into that societal flow. These machines also have like a sidestep with that ability to just move on a point, so you can move towards someone and you can just do a little step almost sideways at the social sidestep and move past them without crashing into people. When you use them functionally, you tend to lead with your head, your shoulders, and then your body follows and the machine goes with you. So you've got body language. You've got body language that can be read by others. This format of device has a range of up to 50 odd kilometres distance, which is a commutable distance on the ideal conditions, about half that off-road. You can climb up to 27 degrees incline. You can travel down a little bit steeper. You can go across very rough terrain. You can bridge the wheels. You can put big tyres on and float across the softest of sand. You can go on snow. You can go out in the rain. You can go across swing bridges and up mountain paths. You can drop down curbs. You can engage on the grass. You can be in the boardroom. There's such a breadth of versatility of use in these machines. So the key aspect to these tools being a tool of partnership is that when you use them, you can feel where you are, you can feel the surface that you're on, you can feel the incline, and you're engaging your body's sensory system, and particularly your visual and balance system, your vestibular system, to navigate and move through the world. And in this process, we move a little bit more naturally. It can be read by others. We've got body language, so out there in a crowded space, you can read what people are doing. They can read you. You get to engage just by the act of balancing. You're also engaging your whole body system, and you're exercising somewhat. You're seated in a very upright position and seated nice and up over the hips, because you don't need to put a rake into a chair just to exist, because you're not going through that pushing action. And when you go on a slope, there's going to be a natural rearward tilt. So the machine is always responsive and changing to the environment and how you're riding, leaning forward and back for acceleration and braking, and making micro adjustment movements just to stay still, a little bit like sitting on a Swiss ball. You're getting micro pressure relief, you're getting articulation of body, you're getting the joints moving of the body, so the body, like the pump that it is starting to work a little bit more, and you're getting a little bit of unseasoning happening through the body, which when you've been sat for 18 years and you hop on a thing like this, it's a wonderful thing. You're getting core exercise somewhat as you mobilize and function through the world. These machines sit around about 75 kilograms in weight, so they're an item to handle, so they get up on ramps or lifts or hoists into vehicles to be transported greater distances. They're able to charge up overnight, good to go. They have beginner modes and more advanced modes to be able to make it less sensitive, more sensitive according to where the skill set and learning progression of somebody is. There's adjustability in the seat cushioning and seat angle, seat backs and distance between knees, foot plate heights. There's stabilising legs that go down, so there's an ease of transfer. And also, just if you're going in and sitting at a desk, you can be off duty, so to speak, and just sitting static for a while. They're weatherproof, and they can go out in the rain, and you can engage with the elements and all weathers. And as long as you've got traction, they'll stay upright. And in the partnership too, you can carry objects, you can carry extra weight out around this front area, out around the back area. And all it's going to do is create a knee, just like when you're walking, when you carry a weight, you change the angle of your body so you can accommodate that change in the centre of mass. It becomes one with you. So if we leant back slightly and then put a weight out here in the front, we would still have a central mass, and we would still be at a balance point, and we can accelerate and we can brake from that point. So it's highly adaptable to how we sit and the tasks that we do. So the function and then the subsequent performance and outcome of this type of device. As a tool, it has a dynamic balance point that a rider sits over and engages the balance system, the vestibular and visual system, to control it, to move through the world and to engage with the world. So what is it to move with balance in the world? Well, when you haven't done it for a long time, when you've been sat in a wheelchair, in a static wheelchair, and you've been pushing around, you haven't got that vestibular pitch, yaw and roll engagement, because you're not moving fast enough. The vestibular system really cares about speed and acceleration. So you've got to have all that together to get that properly engaging and then get the relevant brain chemistry happening. When we move in the world in a tool like this, we start engaging the body, and the body starts getting articulated from the hips and the knees and the ankles, and the movement and twist and torso and arms, and the body starts working like the pump that it is, and we start getting blood flow, we start getting that energy flow, which is, it really registers after 18 years of sitting static in a chair, and then you get that. It's a notable thing. With that too, you get the vibration and the feedback of riding over the different surfaces in the ground, the wind in your hair, the sun in your face, the rain on your face, on your skin. You know, the sensory input is fantastic, and it's driven around that aspect of dynamic balance, of movement with dynamic balance, as well as being in the environment and being productive in the environment. So it's really about feel. And when we get into that space of feel, that takes us into a space of productivity. Because when we feel good, we do more. And this aspect of moving with balance, I'd really like to bring in the thinking here of Professor Andrew Huberman from the Huberman Lab in the United States.
where he presents the philosophy of the body and the mind being one unit and working together for the homeostatic point of function and point of life, and the point that we feel good and then are motivated to do things. And I'd highly recommend his podcasts, his YouTube channels. Fantastic information around the nuts and bolts of how we work. So the literature presented by Professor Huberman around balance and movement points to the good stuff and what's actually going on when we're out there engaging balance in life. And it's that when we move with balance and we've got acceleration and we then move off axis, and so we get that turn, or that almost essentially a carving turn, and of course we're getting all the reward from being out there and achieving tasks and the resolution of a goal. But the chemistry that allows us to feel good, to feel that heightened sense of awareness and that heightened sharpness, and be in that position of learning. And when we're in a balance-based activity, if we can learn and learn more, we're going to be more productive. We get that serotonin and dopamine release when we move off axis, taking us into that productive space. And this is one of the takeaways I'd dearly love to leave you with, is that if we can move in life and feel better, feel good, we as people who are dealing with trauma and injury and loss and all the barriers that come with it, we are going to start engaging more. Because when you are whole and healthy and happy, you tend to do the things that feel good. You challenge yourself for sure, but things need to feel good in the cost-benefit equation of life to keep doing it, to progress. So if you can be part of putting a tool of partnership into somebody's life that feels good, you're going to see this pathway to productivity driven by that intrinsic reward, by that instant chemical change that a person gets, and that rhythm that somebody can develop once they're starting moving whole, healthy and happy. You start seeing the development of skill, you start seeing motivation, and in that development of skill and moving in a product like this, you start seeing people develop a rhythm in life. And that rhythm is about a coordinated, connected, rhythmic movement that allows for achievement, that allows for risk and reward cycles, that becomes sustainable and not only benefit the person themselves, but benefit all the people around them, the spouses, the families, the kids, the workplaces, society at large. Shift a mind, shift a body, shift a mind, shift a heart, change the world. And these machines allow us to integrate into society more because of how we feel and we present, and we're that more positive face, and we get positivity back, we get engagement back, the perception of self, and beyond that, we take on a format that is legible, that can be understood by people in society at large. We have body language when we move on this. When we're going down the street, we want to turn one way, we turn our head, we turn our shoulders, and we go. It can be read. We have body language in terms of postural sway, which is about weight shift and movement over a dynamic balance point. And that postural sway allows us to engage with people in a more naturalistic manner out there in society. And to illustrate this, watch a person in a wheelchair, a static wheelchair, come up to a group of people talking. A group of people who have that organism of humanity as they move in and out and they chat, and there's a change of body positioning all the time. Along comes a wheelchair, parks there, and this group of people freezes. And you'll see it again and again. And that's heartbreaking for the person in the chair. We don't want to be a wet blanket out there in society. But on these machines, when you go into that same environment, that live organism of people continues on. And you, in a self-balancing device, just become part of it. And you move in and out, and you've got the postural sway, and people engage in a much more healthy and holistic manner. So we get this postural sway, and in this postural sway and this continual movement over a live balance point, we actually get a form of exercise. And this exercise runs through the body for people of various injuries. You don't have to have trunk control to benefit from this, because you're being held in that brace-like seat. So we get this exercise over a nice body position of upright pelvis and sitting up over the pelvis, opening up through the torso, so we get benefits throughout digestion. Breathing becomes more open and fluid, and our overall engagement and energy in the world changes for the better. A fantastic element of this machine is that it is a live platform, and responsibility falls on the rider themselves to manage that platform at all times, to stay upright, to stay centered and balanced, to stop. Because when the postural change happens and you move, it'll go somewhere. And it's very complex in relation to the surface that you're riding on. This is a challenge and it's a demand, but it also is a reward. So as opposed to wrapping people up in a sort of a protective bubble and don't take any risk, it's about having capability and the ability to take some risk, as in walking. I don't mean the risk of doing crazy things. I mean the risk of just taking a step in a normal walking cycle. When somebody's walking, between every step there's a point of strength and balance, and then there's a transition point that is risky. Because if you slip, trip or move or stop or break that movement, you're going to fall, and there's potential consequences in that. So that risk and reward relationship that we have simply in walking in everyday life when we're well, when we're whole, is of real value in life. And there's an element of that presented in this machine which is not often found in mobility devices. There is a need, if you are being a person that's reliant on pushing for exercise and doing high loading pushing, and you're now not pushing for exercise, and you're now using one of these tools a lot in your life, and you may have energy and scope to exercise elsewhere in life, like go paddling, do something else that is for purpose, that is not solely about mobilizing. These machines have the ability that we can reach out and be productive outside of the scope of the machine, so the sense of self and spatial awareness grows to a point where you can tow things behind you, push things, pull things, lift things, carry things, and you can be very productive out in society, become more in terms of your productivity and achievement. And of course, when you do that with feeling and it's fun, the impact of the cost benefit makes it a self-perpetuating cycle. And I love the words of Galen Cran's American architect and seating specialist, who says the best posture is the next one. And with this, we get this infinite number of variable changes where we can ride sitting in different positions, from just leaning forward and going with good contact on the seat back, through to changing the body mass and leaning in a different amount, changing the angles and the positions all the time. I really like what she says, because we get this infinite variable seating postural positions as we move through the hinge points of the body and sit differently as well. So we get this multi-position seating all within the performance and mobilization of life every day. So in the journey of learning and placing one of these machines, we need to go through a cycle of aligning expectations, of developing the skill set, of ingraining behaviours and social etiquette, so that people can be out there, be productive, use the capabilities of the machines in a way that's right for the user themselves, as well as for the society and the context. When we look at the question of value and why we place a machine like this versus another machine in somebody's life, I'd like you to really think about looking through the eyes of the user, of the client, the person who needs this, the person with mobility issue, because they're the one who lives with the product 24 hours a day. We need to eat and breathe it. It needs to be beyond a tool that gets us from A to B. It needs to be beyond the general markers that we use in society to say, yep, that's of value, we've ticked the boxes. Currently our boxes don't really go into that space of feel. But if we adapt our thinking to feel as the basis for self-motivation, and from that motivation we get into being productive. Productivity leads to the achievement of tasks, the achievement of objectives, and it becomes part of this whole and healthy cycle. But we have to be able to achieve this over time. Think about it yourself. Feel and fun are critical and are essential to the engagement in life on going down any path for the cost benefit of anything. And then we can start finding measure for sustainable activity, ongoing over time. We can put that extra effort into things that don't feel quite right for a portion of time, but we all know about product that ends up collecting dust out there in the garage or in the closet. Intriguingly, this current format is a one-size-fits-all. Essentially, there is ability to change footplate to seat height and seat back angles and change the seat backs and the padding and the cushions and so on, but because of the balanced relationship between the person and the device itself, this one-size-fits-all is actually really manageable. It becomes in tune with whatever body is on top of it. And each of those bodies will ride a little bit differently according to the power and torque demands for weight. The centre of mass between, if somebody's got very long legs and the seat is set up high, it becomes a little bit more tippy and the response is a bit sharp. And when it comes down low and you get a low centre of mass, you sat within the machine a little bit, it's a little bit more stable in that movement action. And it's sensitive enough that we've had quad amps ride these machines and have very good control. Whatever physical presentation someone has when they're riding these machines, all the muscle groups get used, all the functionality gets used. So if somebody's got good strength in their legs, then that'll be part of motivating the control of the machine, as opposed to somebody like myself as a paraplegic with no movement in my legs. They're just an anchor and a hinge point, and we compensate with other areas of our body. This current format can easily accommodate people from about 4'4" through to 6'7", I think is about the tallest person currently on one of these machines. And the age range spreads from the youngest permanently in a machine is about 13 years old and through to however old you like. So looking at this through the user perspective. At Omeo we've got hundreds of them out there in the world, and in my journey of developing the training and the trial process and protocols along with Springer Damo in the States, I'm very proud of the accuracy and the high rate of use that we have out of our client base around the world. And this is relative to our wide range of users, from our C5 tetraplegics through our paraplegics, our amputees, our people with MS, spina bifida, strokes, traumatic brain injuries, chronic fatigue, any number of mobility issue, and they all have different challenges and demands in using a balance-based machine. But it's incredible that the fortitude of human spirit that is on show here, of people who are of the mind to persevere and to ingrain and to learn, to learn and train their body to essentially walk again, to use the balance mechanisms to manage the tool, which is one of the most important parameters. The mind who can use a tool and develop the etiquette and the format to stay safe out in society and to engage with society and the environment in a way that is productive and sustainable. And it's highly adaptable in terms of size and weight of rider in these, because you're working off a central dynamic balance point. So achieving tasks, we have people that can cook a meal in these with elegance and movement, through to people who are hopping on a plane, towing their manual wheelchair, working between cities, staying in motels, in the evening going out for a 20-kilometre ride, watching the sunset, calling back in, having a meal, going out to the pub, and still having the energy to exist and do other things in life, still have the energy to perform. It's not an energy sapping, it's an energy feeding, even though you're exercising tool. Clients who go out and go down to the sports fields and are able to coach rugby and soccer and athletics, to have that mobility in life that allows people to engage in all these different tasks, to be able to get onto different surfaces, to run over the grass, to not be socially isolated when you go down to the soccer field and have everybody satellite around you like you're a rock in the flow of humanity, and then everything moves and leaves you isolated over there. to be able to be mobile down at the beach at a surf life-saving event where you can just zip along the beach and you're not stuck, the effort of getting from A to B. You're more mobile than most people are on the beach. That you can go and get the coffee or the ice cream from the caravan and bring it back and give something to someone else. You can carry them. To be able to cross the swing bridge and go up the alpine path. Pitch a tent and sleep out under the stars. All with a drive. I can go out there and I can mow the lawn. I can push the lawnmower around. I can push a shopping trolley around the supermarket. And I'm engaging because I can steer the trolley and the different weights and steer the machine and separate those movements and make them work together. I can chop the wood, I can load up the wood with the drop store, and it's physical labour. I can tow my boat down to the lake and go for a paddle. And all these things have outcomes that are a real part of a value system in life. And the feel about when we use these in life is there's the feel about the task achievement, the reward and the feel, and yes, I've achieved that. But there's also that internal feel and that dopamine and serotonin release and change and the alertness and the ability to engage in life and feel and touch the world around you in movement. When you feel things on a static platform, they feel a certain way. When you move and feel things at the same time, it feels different and it feels good. You get to use your eyes moving around in the world and you get that parallax of life as things move past and around, and you get to change focus and you get essentially a better sense of seeing and feeling and being in space through the input that's coming there. Your sensory systems become more alert when you're not so focused on any given task, when your world is not in this view of narrow mobilization, but you're out here and you're engaging in the world. You get to take it in, you hear differently, you see differently, you smell the smells of the world, and you get to be part of the rhythm of everything going on in this wider view. And I liken this to when I was pre-injury and I was a ski racer, and you'd be going down the mountain and you're in this heightened sense of alertness and awareness, and as you're carving your turns and you're moving and you're dropping down and you're moving past people and people are moving at different speeds and you've got all sorts of things happening on the mountain, but it's not information overload. It's this rhythm and this pattern that you're just part of and moving within. And a very similar thing happens when you're moving around using subconscious movement over a dynamic balance point in a machine like this. You become motivated to move. You're motivated to get up and achieve a task. One aspect is because you can articulate your body and you get that pump going. Been sitting watching TV all evening, or I'm going to jump up and go get an ice cream from down at the shop. It feels good to move. And the other is that the things that you achieve, you engage with people. It's nice to be out and engaging with people, so you get that drive of social connection. You're able to action it with ease. You get that drive to achieve any given task, long-term goal that you might set up, to be out there with your children, to be out there on the sports field, to be out there and achieving the next point of action in life. The mobilization of the body is fantastic, because in all this articulation, things are being mobilized within the brace of the seat and the change of footplate and seat height. And as you're moving and twisting and turning, you're getting this wonderful release. And the more skill you develop in one of these machines and the more aggressive you can be, you can actually get to a point of a workout that has a sweat up by really throwing it around and moving over different dynamic surfaces. We have another client who travels 5 kilometres to work every day. And right there's 4 transfers in and out of a vehicle that don't need to happen. So there's shoulder protection, there's the catching of the fresh air, there's the moving with mobility and the exercise, and the good visual health by travelling through the world. And also at work, being able to sit there and have the legs down at a table, or keep the legs up and stay on balance mode and lean on a table and allow the chair to drift in and out and move slightly, and keeping a mobility in the body in that sort of environment. And it doesn't have to be that it's a large commute or something out on a plane. It can be 30 metres. We have another client who, with her husband, has a yard very close to the house where she'll go to work and do some administrative business. And she has MS, and she called me the other day and said, look, I've done about 100 kilometres now on this new machine, and I'm starting to get really comfortable. I've got past the state of fear, and I can just whip up and down the ramp, and I'm going from the house over to work in the morning. And, I go up the ramp and I get inside and park the Omeo and get up to go. And before I go over to my desk to start my day, I look down at the Omeo and go, oh, I love you. Now that's a heck of a statement, that somebody can feel like that, have that energy and the emotion and that at the start of the day. That she's not arriving to work in that deficit and struggle of having to walk with the cane across the path and feel less. She can feel empowered. And interestingly, that journey could happen with a mobility scooter, it could happen with a power wheelchair, but I guarantee that emotional response to the tool would not be the same. And it's an incredible way to start the day. Be empowered, to have elegance, to have rhythm in your life. And the cognitive action that you also engage, and the cognitive actions that you get on here range from the internal and the self-facing processing of thought and engagement in life. We move to feel. Put an emotion in front of a person, they'll respond with some physical movement. And when we've got this, we're into that naturalistic space and heading towards a homeostatic point in our body. Being out there and engaging our body when we're changing our view and getting that wider view, we're able to be more cognitively engaged out in the world. And we get the stories back from our users where their engagement with people around them, from their family to their colleagues to people in general out there in the world, has got better and better. Skill acquisition is a journey, and the training that we pack around these machines, from trials through to ongoing training once someone has a machine in life, is all about developing the skill and making the person be the best learner they can, but also get into that position of being able to be a self-learner. And then every now and then you input the right bit of information at the right time, and you can grow someone's skill level so they can be more and more productive. But it is really intuitive once you've got the base method and the base parameters down for any given person and their mobility issue and the physicality they have. Then that skill set can just grow and grow, and it's infinite. It can be refined over time, and after years and years of learning, people are still learning new skills. The increased use of our sensory system is wonderful. We get that change in our brain chemistry. We get that sense of feel all through us, but we get that heightened alertness, that heightened engagement through all our senses in life. And we find a rhythm in the way we're moving. And in that rhythm, people find that they're more engaged in self, and from self, they're more engaged in the world, in society, immediately and at large. Freedom and empowerment is an interesting one. People are empowered to do things, and it's wonderful when you're not living by permission all of the time, where you're not having to wait, where you can go out and tow your boat down to the lake and go for a paddle independently of other people. You have to be organised, obviously, but you're feeling like you're motivating yourself. You've got power and control yourself. When we ask people, what change has this tool made to your life? Overwhelmingly, the answer is freedom. It's what people feel. They feel free. But it's as much of an emotional release than it is a physical task-orientated release. And this is backed up by people when their machine is off on getting serviced or something. They say, oh, it feels like I've been injured again. And they can't wait to have their machine back. They're not feeling as whole as they once were. They're feeling that psychological entrapment of injury again. So the engagement of people out in life and the connections that people make when they get that subconscious movement and freedom out there in life and they're moving around is such that it enables parents to be more focused and presenting out of themselves towards their children, to engage in life, to go and be part of activities, whether it's activities together or activities for them, it's irrelevant. But that being present is a huge thing, and that flows on to the wider point of being productive in life, being valued, and it's a two-way street. You get that value back from your co-workers, back from people who you engage with, back from people in wider society, from the stranger down the street. And you become part of the fabric of society, where many people have been isolated in their apartments for years, post-stroke, post some form of injury, where they've got that psychological barrier of engaging again. And they get out on a machine, firstly, that looks quite good. It's like putting a good pair of trousers on and a nice pair of shoes and so on. But they get out and they get to move, and we've got people who are now going down the street, across the sand, down the beach, and going having a cup of coffee every day, where they hadn't been out of the house in 2 years. People who say, oh, I didn't think I was depressed, but since I've got my machine, there's more sunshine in the day. Through that engagement, people are reshaping their lives. And of course, the engagement of self, the sense of self-worth, self-value, and being able to reflect and really look at oneself, is contingent on how we move in the world, on the impact, how the world sees us. So being able to go out and move with ease and grace and rhythm in the world allows a person to then engage in quite a different way. There's a different starting point. And kids are a wonderful filter for reading engagement. You'll get a kid come up to you in a chair, and it happens often like this, and they'll just be going, wow, how does that work? And they're trying to see how it stays up, and it looks like magic. You say to the kid, oh, it's magic. It's the power of my mind. And they're going, oh, no. And play that through a bit, and you have this whole discussion that grows in this engagement with these bright eyes of humanity who are wanting to discover and to learn. And you can do things like, they'll say, oh, it's the joystick. You're moving by the joystick, and you take your hands off and you hold your hands up and you go, well, actually, I'm going to move this way. And you just let the chair move through a really subtle weight shift, and then let the chair move back, and you go, I'm thinking this way, I'm thinking this way. And it takes them on this journey of misdirection and discovery, which is just really delightful. And then you build through and let them in on it and show them how it works and why. And that wonder then becomes a wonder in the technology and the wonder of what is built and achieved. It doesn't disappear, but it becomes anchored in reality. And those sorts of opportunity for engagement happen at every strata of life. I had one the other day where I was going down the road, flat out, and there was a family of about 5 kids on bikes on the footpath, and the smallest of them, who was probably about 5 or 6 years old, he took off and he chased, and he was giving me a race. I didn't know him from a bar of soap, and I made sure by the end of the block that he could just win. And as he won, he was like, woohoo! He'd never seen anything quite like this, and he won. He engaged. It made his day, but you know what? It made my day. It's a great thing. In the connections we make, walking down the street, holding your wife's hand, looking in the eye, holding contact, not having to look away because you can go with the same sort of rhythm and you're not worrying about what you're tripping over. That's absolute gold. And wrapping up all the connection too is the connection of self, the sense of self and self-worth. So we spend a lot of time post-injury, especially for acquired injury, of going, I was this, I was that, I did this, I did that. And then one day we get to a point, and this sense of self can really accelerate this journey, and it is a journey of habilitation, where we say, I am this, I am that, I do this. Hence the title of this talk. So movement and coordination and rhythm are a point where everyone's got their own rhythm, their own pattern, and all people walk differently. So as people develop their rhythm with this tool, they get a flow out there in society in this tool of partnership. And that movement, that coordination allows people to be more productive. So the more you can do, you can now push the trolley through the supermarket. It might not be a skill that you start with, but as you get that rhythm, that coordination, able to separate the movements of all parts of the body and external objects like a trolley, then you can move in unison rhythm and be really productive and feel good about it at the same time. Everybody presents to the world with their own rhythm. We see that in music and in people dancing. But when you haven't got the ability to move with balance, your rhythm, you become the Irish dancer in a chair with no legs, and That's tough. And we find elements of rhythm in life, and things like archery you can still do from a chair, and it kind of feels like there's a rhythm and a flow through the whole body, and then you've got the projectile moving off. But when you start to move in this, the most efficient and the best ways of moving actually become the cyclic, fluid, continuous and contiguous motions where you build and release and build and release and transition between a point of strength through a space of vulnerability to a point of strength again. And so one action is joined to the next, and that's the basis of rhythm. When we can do this as self, we start presenting differently in life. And with an increase in coordination, we're able to do more. We can physically climb up more things and get more places. We can carry more things. We can move and maintain balance in any given activity. Moving quickly over different terrain with a ease and not jolting the body and not jumping the machine, but soaking up the forces and being at one with the surface that you're moving on. Which, of course, everything's wrapped up in some form of productivity. So the more capable you are on a machine, the more productive you'll be for all aspects of life. And in that productivity, we have power, we have the freedom of some form of self-determination. From moving at 20 kilometres an hour to ranging out to 50 kilometres distance, out in all weathers, up and down the hills, over the lumps and bumps of life, to going to the pub and having a dance with someone, to being able to move in life with rhythm and self-expression, to be self-aware. And when this growth and this learning progression happens, we end up in a productive space. We can be in the city at the motel for work and then travel 20 k's across town and back and see the sunset, go out for a meal, talk to 20 people on the way home, call in at the pub for a drink. It can be very productive. It can be productive with our family. It can be productive at the sports field with the kids, for the sense and space of self going out and doing work and achieving whatever the task may be. That productivity grows and grows with our capability, but it becomes a dual point of growth because those around it are affected by us, and a rising tide floats all boats. And the process for training people on these machines, it's a little bit like having children, and they're learning to walk, they're learning to go through any learning progression that has a bit of risk. And for a while you're holding your breath when they first do something and they're a bit vulnerable, or and they're up in a high space and walking across could fall off, that type of thing. When they achieve, it's wonderful. And kids need to take risks, kids need to fall, kids need to be exposed to failure. There's literature that points in the learning process that we should actually be failing 20% of the time at least. When we're trying to learn something new, 20% of it should be too hard, it should be at a fail point. So we get that bulk of 80% of incoming, but we need the challenge on top of that. So when we start teaching people with these, it's like having someone that you're being very protective of, and some people that seem you're very nervous, and it takes some time, and it takes this learning progression to get to a point where you have that confidence and you can sleep at night and say, yes, I've put the right thing in the right place and that person is safe and secure, and they're going to go out and they're going to live a more dynamic and a life with a wider view. It's a great feeling. It's a privilege to work in this space. It absolutely is. And when you get to that point of confidence and see that productivity, and often it's a very short run, and you look back and you go, wow, how come I was ever so nervous about this person or that person in this training procedure? It's an amazing thing, the fortitude of the human spirit, when somebody is focused to do something that actually fits with the cycle of the human body system. So I was made to move as a human being, just like all of you. And now I am, with a device like this in my life. So my summation really is a device that has dynamic balance in it for mobility. Absolutely changes a life for those of us with mobility needs. So thank you for all coming along, and love to have a chat. Please reach out at any time, and we've got our Q&A just coming up. Cheers.